So all you're seeing is everybody's best moment. And then it makes our life not look that great. And you can't compete with something that's fake.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Coganella Online Variety Entertainment Podcast. Here's your host, Paul Coganella.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to COVE Podcast. This is the show in which we entertain and try to inspire both our podcast listeners and YouTube viewers with a wide variety of entertainment offerings, including music, poetry, special guest interviews, travel blogs, and I especially love conversations with authors, which is one that we have today. And before we bring in our special guest, I would like to bring in our producer Craig Jackman. Jump on in here, say hello.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you again.
So great to see it. Looks like for anyone watching on YouTube, you've got the Scrooge coming in. What is this all about?
Well, actually, yes. I am going to be auditioning for the role of Scrooge. And so I thought I'd get a head start. Now, I don't know, but getting a head start on growing the natural facial hair is probably a good idea because I prefer that when I do a role. I'm sure you know how it feels when you take the hair off of one of your characters with all of the spirit gum. It's like peeling. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off. There we go. That's what I was looking for. And it hurts when it does that.
The funny thing, the ironic thing that happened at Disney whenever I played a character that needed facial hair was we would have to, because of Disney's employee cast member dress code, we couldn't have beards. So I would have to shave all of my facial hair off so I could glue or strap a beard on. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But what a transformation it does make, and we can...
Oh, yeah.
Explore this on another episode, but just your hairstyle or your facial hair, how that just can change your character instantly.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, we will talk about that at a later date. But today we are here to talk to our special guest. I'm very excited to speak with. She's a licensed clinical social worker. Her name is Keri Cooper. She's the owner of Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy in Northern New Jersey. In her private practice, she counsels teens and works to give them the tools they need to navigate life. Keri takes a holistic approach to therapy, looking at the whole person, not just their symptoms. Keri's the author of Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know, a book designed to give parents steps on how to improve their child's mental health. She's a speaker and writer who helps educate teens and parents on the topics teens face in everyday life. She's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and continues to further her education by obtaining additional certifications in her field, one of her favorite pastimes. She's currently working on a follow-up book, which will be a workbook for teens. And when Keri isn't busy working with teens, she's busy with her own 4 children and her flock of chickens. Keri can also be seen spotted falling on the bunny slopes or soaking up the sun on the lake in her spare time. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Keri Cooper.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for making the time to be here. This is actually a really interesting time. We're recording this here in mid-October. We just came off of our mental health walk, our annual mental health walk out here with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And my daughter, she's 9 years old. She, for the past few years, has been one of the top fundraisers for the cause, which is super special. So they asked her to actually speak at the opening ceremony of the walk last week. And the president of the local NAMI chapter was talking to her about they want to start rolling out resources and mental health information to elementary schools, which is when I was reading your bio earlier, it just fits so well into like your focus on young people, and you mentioned teens, and so I'm very excited to speak with you today. How's everything out there on the East Coast?
Everything is good. Within the first 5 minutes, you guys named 2 of my favorite things, A Christmas Carol and Disney.
There we go. You're in the right place.
Yes.
Perfect. So I warned you in advance. We do an icebreaker challenge with
Yes.
our guests because it's always great to read all the professional accolades in your bio, but we also want to hear what is most important to you. And we do that by inviting you to tell us everything we could possibly know about you in 60 seconds or less. Are you ready for the challenge?
I think so.
All right. And I'm not going to stop you. So whenever you cross the finish line is when you cross it, but
Okay.
you can begin in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, I am obsessed with Disney. Like it's an issue. I need help. I have 4 children. I do have a flock of chickens. I also have a bunny rabbit, but I have severe allergies, which does not mix well in my house for me. I love to cook, but not normally during the week when the kids are going to a million different activities. And I really love the summer and all things warm. I'm trying to think what else there is about me. I don't know. I work a lot.
Favorite musical artist?
Lady Gaga,
Gaga. First concert you ever went to?
Lollapalooza,
First car you ever owned?
Jeep,
What color?
white.
What's your favorite food to cook?
Italian,
What's your favorite food to pick up or order out?
Indian.
Oh, good choices. And
Yeah.
that is a minute right there. Got a lot
Wow.
to know a lot about you. So you have severe allergies and bunnies. Do you have any cats or dogs?
No, so my allergies are really, really bad to animals. So the bunny is like all I could basically tolerate in my house.
It's an indoor bunny.
Oh, yes. Oh,
What's
yes.
what's
It's a
bunny's
rescue
name?
bunny. And we actually promised it would never go outdoors
Hmm,
because apparently that's not great for bunnies. So our bunny has taken over our entire mudroom and has quite the castle to live in.
nice. What's bunny's name?
Oreo. And it is my 9-year-old's bunny, actually. But, the whole family has taken this on.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm excited to speak with you, as I mentioned, because mental health is very important, especially in my household, and I'm interested to find out like how did it all come to be? If we go to the beginning of Keri's story, how did you gain interest in this, and how did it grow? How did you decide? When did you decide to dedicate your life to this field?
Yeah. So it was really back in high school. I had a lot of fun in high school, and a lot of my friends definitely had some problems that they were facing, and there was really nobody that they felt like they could talk to. And, I was watching all this happen saying like, there needs to be an adult who's not going to judge, but who's going to be able to listen and to guide. Because listen, teenagers, they do stupid things. They just do. But if they're able to talk to an adult about what they've done or what they may do without judgment and just to get some guidance, that really helps in those teen years. So I decided from a really early age, like that's what I want to do. So went to college, went to graduate school. I was like, this is my path, jumped right into it, always working with, children and adolescents. My early years, I was working in residentials, I was working crisis, group homes, like pretty intense stuff. And we had teams of therapists and teams of psychiatrists and, more therapy than any human could possibly imagine every single day happening. And like, they were getting better, but never 100%. And that really bothered me. Like, why can't we get past this hump?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until years later that my own daughter had really severe behavioral issues as a toddler. And we realized it was actually a dairy intolerance. And when we removed the dairy, all of a sudden her behavior got like a normal toddler.
Wow.
Yeah. So I actually went back to school to become a certified health coach because I wanted to see, what are we missing? Is food really impacting our mood? Now, food is not always like the magic bullet here, but food does impact our gut. And many of our chemicals are actually made in our gut. So I really started diving into how our entire physical body, exercise, food, sleep, water impacts our mental health. And that's when I started my own practice. That's when I really took a very holistic approach. And now, many years after, what I kind of discovered, now we're starting to see a lot of the research start coming out saying, oh, wow, wait a second. Food and exercise, really crucial to mental health. Yep, it is. So
Absolutely.
now it's kind of all catching up to where I've been for the last, over 10 years.
Wow. And that's, it seems like such a duh thing. Like everybody
Right?
says, eat right and exercise, you'll feel great. But like, who knew it was like this literal?
It really is. And we keep on missing that, and I work with primarily high school and college kids. I do work with, some middle school kids as well. But, these schools are trying so hard to talk about mental health because we truly are in a mental health crisis. I have never seen it change so much, from 20 years ago when I started my career to now, mental health looks completely different in the youth population. So they keep on like trying to bring in all these resources and, assemblies and speakers and everything. And it's great, but you're missing the point. Like they're going to the cafeteria and eating processed sugary food, sugary drinks. Like they're not doing anything really helpful in gym class. Like we're missing the foundations.
That is so interesting. And so what kind of transitions or changes have you seen in recent years on campus?
Yeah. So in the last 20 years, when I first started my career, the people who came to seek out mental health, it was, attention issues and severe behavioral issues. And then, every once in a while, some anxiety, some depression. What I see now is 100% almost anxiety. I have never seen anxiety like this in these kids. And I thought it was bad a few years ago. And then we hit COVID. And anybody who was hanging on by a thread, that thread broke.
Yeah.
And we're still not better from it. These kids are still really suffering the impacts of what COVID did to them. And I don't think we talk about it enough, that it was a global trauma. And I think you need to use the word trauma. Like all of a sudden, everyone's life was turned upside down.
And not just that, but fear was part of your daily life. Whereas,
Yes.
You could just be living with your regular stresses, regular traumas of life. But now on top of it, there's just a whole nother layer of living in fear. And what must that have been like for young people?
Right. There was constant fear and a constant sense of a loss of control. Am I going to get sick? Am I going to get someone else sick? Is my sports going to be canceled? Am I going to be quarantined? Is there going to be toilet paper in the grocery store? Like it was one of those things. And that's impacted all of us, but especially our kids, especially our young ones who didn't have the words to talk about it, but just their life changed so rapidly. So I know you were talking about your daughter who's 9. I have a 9-year-old. My daughter was in kindergarten when the world shut down. So she's really that first school age kid that went through this, those kindergartners. And I see a huge difference in her grade. I see them really not being able to cope as well. I see like they just can't handle anything. Like everything's like, oh my goodness, the world is falling apart because they didn't have the words to process what they went through.
Sure. And the regular normal socialization that would happen in kindergarten and first grade will completely went out the window and into a Zoom screen.
Yes.
Are you seeing any improvement, or how do you think moving forward the best way to approach this is with kids that are that age?
I think that although it happened a long time ago, it's okay to bring it up and talk about it. Like, hey, remember that time when everything was on Zoom? Because now they have more words to talk about it. Now they're able to be like, yeah, that was really weird. Yeah, that was really weird, and to talk about what that means to them now, because some kids, there's still this sense of fear. What if it happens again? And we need to be able to let them explore that and to process that. So I do think that we do almost have to go backwards and have these conversations in order to heal them to move forward.
As far as like connecting with kids, I remember being a kid, and when I would speak to an adult, it was always like there's an adult and there's a kid, there's them and then me. What have you found is something that works really well, or what tools do you use to connect with children in in a sense of, being a peer. I work for a police department. I'm the public information officer, but I'm also on the peer support team. And a lot of times, because I'm a civilian and I'm not a police officer, it can be a challenge to get an officer to open up to me about what they're dealing with, because I don't wear a badge and I don't go out there in the field. And I kind of think it's kind of the same way. There's kind of the same gap between childhood and adults. What tools have you found have been successful in helping you connect with them and help them to open up to you?
Yeah, what I always say, and this is the advice I always give parents: listen more, speak less. The moment you speak and give them kind of advice or almost what seems to be judgment, they're going to shut down. So to be able to sit back and reflect more upon them, like, oh, yeah, I'm hearing that was really hard for you. And I think that's the best way to connect with these kids. I mean, yes, there's always times when you have to kind of give advice and, parent, but there's also times when you just have to listen. And I always tell parents, like, bite your tongue, bite your tongue. They're talking to you about something really important. Just listen, and let them talk a lot until they're kind of like talked out.
Yeah. I was in a training recently, a peer support training, and I found it really interesting that the gentleman who was providing the course, he would pause, he would make a point and he'd pause, and then he'd say, "So what did you hear me say?" Like, as opposed to, what did I just say? Or what information did I just give you? Put it in your own words. What did you hear me say? And I thought that was very interesting.
That's really great, because yes, one of the biggest things I always hear are parents telling me, I said this to them, and the kids telling me they said this to me. And it's like two different conversations were taking place, because we all come to conversations with our own stuff. So we hear things based on our own stuff. If we're a kid that doesn't feel confident in school, that feels like, we're not really smart, and we have a parent saying, when we bring home a test that's not great, oh, well, you could have studied more. They hear, I'm stupid and you don't think I studied. And the parents are like, well, no, they're saying it because, like, well, I know they only spent 10 minutes studying. If they spent 20, they would have been fine. But they hear it all differently.
Such an important point. Now, as I read your bio, obviously it wasn't updated. You have your teen workbook out now. So
I do.
You've got your mental health uncensored, which is 10 foundations every parent needs to know. And then you also have the follow-up teen workbook. So is that something that parents would hand to a teen, or you sit down together with and go through
Yes.
it? How does that work?
So the first book, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know, actually came out during the COVID era, time frame, because it was so bad. I was completely booked, couldn't fit anyone else in. Every therapist friend of mine was completely booked. We had parents calling constantly, crying, trying to get their kids seen. So I thought, I need to put information out into the parents' hands now that they can start working through and being able to help their kids immediately. And then I did the teen workbook because, when the kids are, especially like in high school and in college, they don't necessarily want to hear it from their parents as much. So it's kind of like one of those things, you throw the book on their bed and, like, they'll page through it and let them do them. And they'll actually be able to get all the tools without you having to kind of, they would feel, try to dictate to them what to do. Like, they're able to do it on their own.
That's great, because they can make their own discoveries and kind of feel like and realize that they can work through it, not just with on their own, but with help and guidance. And do you find that there is a general strong trust between parents and students, or parents and their children, when they're working through these kind of issues together?
I do. I think that, when you take away the anger and the frustration and the hurt feelings and all of that, the kids really do want their parents there for support and guidance, and they love them. And I always tell the parents, listen, your kid just went through a really stressful day at school. When they come home and maybe they're not nice, or maybe you get the eye rolls, don't take it so personal. Like, don't start a fight over this. Sometimes the kids come home to their safe place, and that's where they dump. And that's okay. Like, as a parent, it's okay to be their safe place.
that old cliche, everyone's fighting their own battles. And it's true. I mean, how many just remember, being a kid and going to school, and how many stressors and battles do kids face in the school years when they're separated from their parents, and maybe they feel like their parents don't even understand, couldn't even comprehend or understand.
Right. And imagine, so I don't know how old you are, but imagine the stress that you went, when you went to school. Imagine it now with the social media and everything being able to be recorded. Like, you have a bad day, you slip and fall in school, everyone kind of laughs for a few minutes and then they move on. Now somebody videoed that. Now it's going to be out on social media. It's like this constant fear of who's going to judge me? How am I going to be judged? Who's going to say something about me? And it's not just like, talking in school. It's now all over social media.
That is an interesting point that you bring up. And I'd love to dig into that, because I have heard it said that, like, growing up with social media is it puts a whole different angle and view or filter on these kids and how they're growing up and how they view success. Can you touch on the importance of the amount of followers, or what popularity means, and how much more pressure there is to be liked and to be followed nowadays?
I mean, the amount of pressure on these kids is really just unbelievable. They are glued to their phones. It's like, who followed me? Does this person like me? Did this person swipe up on my story? Who posted for my birthday? Oh my gosh, I would be anxious all day if I had to deal with that. I mean, we're adults, so it's different for us. But these kids, I mean, in your childhood years, popularity, being within a group, that is important. It's that time period developmentally when you're moving away from your family life into more of a social life. This is all completely normal. But when we were growing up, if a bunch of our friends were hanging out, we didn't necessarily know we weren't there. We especially weren't seeing it on Snap Map. We especially weren't seeing them post all together on TikTok. And in our face, you were left out.
I've thought about that too, because like I just remember, having crushes in school. Like once Friday ended, like, it was a bummer because I had to wait till Monday to see them again. Nowadays, it's like you can just check your phone and find out where they are and what they're doing and who they're hanging out with. And that's gotta be really tough, especially like you just mentioned, if you're not included in that.
Yeah. And it's also about that instant gratification. Like, everything immediately. So these kids now have not developed any type of skill to be able to wait for something good, to be able to process something bad that's happened. It's all just like flying at them. And we see kids getting into so much trouble with this in terms of they see something they don't like. And instead of being able to process that for a second, it's like immediately they're able to respond. And their immediate responses are normally not good because their brains are not fully developed.
Sure. And it'll stick with you. We've seen it with, people, professional adults nowadays that were kids, dumb kids. I want to say dumb kids, but I'm not insulting anybody, with a phone in their hand and Twitter, and that they made a tweet X amount of years ago. And now it comes back to bite them professionally when they're trying to build a life and a family and a career.
Right. I am so happy we did not have social media when I was growing up. I am so happy all of my, poorly thought out behavior at times was not captured for life.
Sure.
Because again, like, their brains are not developed. They're not going to act always in a responsible manner. Like, that's just asking the impossible from them. They're children.
I think there's probably another aspect of it, which is like, not imposter syndrome, but you try to project this image of yourself that isn't you really, and what you think everybody else wants to see. And that's got to be a crazy hurdle when you're in your developmental stages of life, when you're trying to live two different lives, your social media life and who you actually are.
Absolutely. And then you're also comparing yourself to everybody else's fake life on social media. And it's like, oh, but look at the vacation they took. And oh, look at, what they're achieving. And you're seeing again, only their best filtered moments. And even as adults, we get into this when we're seeing like, oh, look at that family and, how lovely their vacation is. Meanwhile, right after that picture's taken, somebody probably was melting down for that family photo, photo shoots, but you don't see that. So all you're seeing is everybody's best moment. And then it makes our life not look that great. And you can't compete with something that's fake.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Mental Health Uncensored? And I don't know if you can give away the 10 foundations, or if you can tease them for us, our listeners, to pick up the book.
Absolutely. So Mental Health Uncensored, 10 foundations every parent needs to know. It's broken into 10 foundations. So the first 5 are physical, and I'm going to give you what the 5 are. It's water, sleep, food, exercise, and meditation. And then there's 5 more mental health principles that I really jump into. And it's saying no, teaching our children that they're not responsible for other people's feelings, which is a really important one. You could still be a really good human being, but not have responsibility of somebody else's feelings and reactions.
Wow.
Letting go and building confidence. Parents need to start letting go. We have way too many helicopter parents, and it's creating an issue. Letting your children be able to deal with disappointment. And the final chapter is learning to teach your child responsibility.
That I can't wait till my book arrives. I tried to order all of my guests' books so they're here so I can hold them up on the show. Yours is arriving today, and I kept checking my doorstep. But those all sound amazing. A couple that grabbed my attention was it chapter 5, meditation?
Yes.
That is amazing, because that's something, if regular listeners to the show know, that it is one of my biggest fallacies in that I recognize, is that I don't spend enough peaceful times and let my head just clear long enough to actually help my mental health. But every time that I do meditate and have meditated, I've had a positive experience, and I just don't do it enough. It's like exercise. How young do you think individuals should start meditating?
Oh, as early as you can get them to start meditating. I love a good family meditation. Everyone lie down in the living room. Let's throw on a meditation and listen to it. Even just, 10 minutes is fantastic. And I also talk about other ways to kind of meditate. I mean, the point of meditation is to be in the present moment, to calm down your nervous system. You could do that in other ways, especially with young children. Take a mindful walk and just be like, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? It's about coming back to the moment.
Wow. That's so important. I haven't even thought about starting that with my kids. My kids are 5 and 9. But it sounds like that is something we should, I mean, I have hard enough time getting myself to do it, but maybe if I, put the responsibility of my children first, we can all do it together. I love that idea, especially the mindful walk. That is something I think they would love.
Yeah, I love a mindful walk, especially in the woods, and just brings you back to nature, and it's so peaceful. And we also, research is showing, if you're in nature, you have less anxiety. So let's get them outside into nature. Absolutely.
And what was it, chapter 7? You're not responsible for other people's feelings.
That's a really hard one for this current generation to really understand, and it puts so much pressure on them. Listen, always be a good person. I tell everybody that all the time. Come from a place of kindness, conduct yourself how it feels good for you to be a good human being. But at the end of the day, you are not responsible for another person's feelings. That's an impossible task to put on these children.
Love that. What is, out of the 10, do you have a top 3?
My top 3 is probably food, sleep, and letting go and building confidence.
I can't wait to dig into all of them, but my mom, she's in the live chat right now, and she will agree with you on sleep. She's always telling me to get more sleep.
It's crucial. Absolutely crucial. I mean, think of how cranky we are when we don't get a good night's sleep. Now imagine your sleep deprived child trying to handle everyday stress. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And speaking of my mom, she asks in the live chat here, Keri, how do you feel about EFT, parentheses, tapping for younger ones?
Oh, I love it. It is something, I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but EFT is like this tapping. I've read into it. I have not started practicing it, but I do know other people who do. And Some people are really loving it. So it's one of those things that you can just kind of Google and find out how to do it. It's very, very simple.
Awesome. Now, before we let you go, is there any advice? I mean, I'm sure your book is just every page is full of advice or what you would say to parents that are raising teens that might be going through it, or even if they're not going through it. It's like going to the gym, right? Practicing good mental health, and it's something you need to incorporate every day, even if they seem like they're in turmoil or dealing with trauma or not. What is the biggest takeaway that you give parents when you do your speaking engagements?
I think one of the things I always kind of like to end with to remind them is that no one has this figured out. Nobody is perfect. And if you're a parent who is trying every single day, that's all you can do. Do not expect yourself to be perfect. You are human as well.
Love it. She is Keri Cooper, author of Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. Pick it up, check it out if you are a parent or an expecting parent. And Keri, thank you so much for spending time with us in the Cove. And it was great to meet you.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you as well.
Well, what a great conversation that was. And especially with, the emphasis on mental health that has really developed recently. Talking to somebody who is focused on our children and our kids. I mentioned it during our conversation with her, but it's been really interesting to see because I am part of the peer support team at work. And, that's connecting with police officers who have been through the academy and out on the streets. And now you're asking them to open up and talk about their feelings to kids who are, in elementary school. And this is a whole new world, all these different new levels of anxiety and pressure on these kids that we didn't have to deal with. And it was just a really great conversation, a really great eye opener to different ways we can connect with kids and start to develop their mental health, strong mental health from a young age.
And I think especially with technology and like you were bringing up, what a perfect opportunity to bring up how social media affects not just us as an adult, but our kids, and how, okay, this is the next generation. And okay, maybe we could have kept things in before, but now we need to be open with how we feel, and that life does have ups and downs, and that we just need to understand that we're going to go through a phase. Or Jim Rohn, a unique individual who's a mentor, talks about the seasons. We have in our lifetime, we go through a spring, a summer, a winter, and a fall. And it's kind of interesting when, okay, everything seems to be great, and then all of a sudden something happens.
Right.
How do we respond to that? And I found this poem from a gentleman that actually I think we've heard from before, Matt Starking, and it's called "Life is Full of Ups and Downs." Because when you think about the mental health is, okay, yes, we all want to be positive and happy, but the human experience is not just about positive and happy. It's about how we deal with some of the not so positive and the not so happy things, and how we get through them. And maybe it's just as simple as just letting it happen, acknowledging that it happens, and moving on, being a river. Like some people do say, be the river. Yes, there may be a rock in the middle, but do you have to fight that rock, or can you go around the rock that is in the middle? So Matt Starking from Africa is quite the poet, and kind of the basic idea of his creative work is to free mankind from racism, political lies, religious superstition, and illusion, but more importantly, living with a positive attitude towards each other and unifying, reforming, and transforming the human race. So I found this poem to be quite unique and quite perfect for this topic of today's podcast.
Excited to hear it, ladies and gentlemen. Here is Life is Full of Ups and Downs by Matt Starking, as interpreted by Craig Jackman.
Life is full of ups and downs, like a roller coaster ride. Times of joy and times of frowns, through which we must abide. Sometimes we reach the highest peak, and life appears so grand, but then we plummet fast and bleak, and just can't understand. But just like on that roller coaster, we must hold tight and ride, for after every dip there's an ascent, and our spirits will soon revive. So when life seems to be crashing down and we just can't seem to find the strength to pick ourselves back up, let hope and resilience be our guide. For ups and downs will always come, but how we choose to cope will determine our happiness and help us thrive and cope.
If you're up to date with the podcast and listening this week, I want to say Happy New Year. It is the first week of 2024, and 2023 was great. We launched this podcast and got season 1 rolling. Can't wait to see everything that unfolds in 2024 as we end season 1 and what lies ahead in season 2. Make sure you're up to date with us in our COVE Patreon community at patreon.com/COVEpodcast. I want to welcome our brand new COVE Patreon members, my mom, Sandra Carganella, and our friend Kathy Balcom. Thank you so much for joining. I can't wait to share all the exclusive COVE Patreon perks with you, and I just appreciate you so much for helping this show continue to go and continue to grow into 2024. Love you all. Can't wait to see you very, very soon. Have a great week.
I put the coat on her!